Hello everyone, hello Dr. Pantelidis. We are Team4 and today we're going to present about the management strategy of DIG Sports and their executive decision of stopping to sell sword rifles.
Today we're going to be going over the decision of why Dick's Sporting Goods took out their firearms department, the company snapshot, external and internal, SWAT and TOWs, recommendation and implementation.
Okay, let's dive into it. Now I want to start with a quote from the CEO, Edward Sack. Even as the strong supporter of the Second Amendment, we feel now is the time to have meaningful discussions about common sense reform. And he took 3 decisions to change the company DIG Sports forever. He stopped selling sword rifles, changing the legal age from 18, which is nationally recognized, to 21 in his local stores. And he stopped high-capacity magazines and sword rifle sales in the stop and destroyed every item that he had referring to those items mentioned previously, which was total worth of $5 million. He didn't return it to the providers, but he turned it into scrap metal. So why did decision matter strategically? Of course, we have to look at the financial cost. $250 million in lost revenue, hunting category, accessories. There was a huge decline for the company, and it's not something that easily can be taken by any company. Cultural signal. DIG Sports was the first company to act only 2 weeks after the school shooting has happened in Parkland. And the CEO conventions over quarterly logic. And companies like Walmart, Kroger, LL Benz, and many others have followed the footsteps of DIG Sports, changing their procedures and not selling guns people who are under 21. But it didn't go so clearly because there was a huge backlash from NCCF expelling DIGs from membership, Mossberg's cut supply tires, and Pro 2A boycotts and customer attributes. So this was not a PR move, but it was an executive decision made by the CEO that shows the strong culture of the brand itself.
So the company snapshot for the year of 2017, the strongest survivor in contracting brick and mortar industry, they had $8.59 billion in net sales and 8.4 year over year. $323 million net income, 17% market share, #1 sports retailer in the US. 716 stores with 28,000 employees throughout all those stores, $1 billion in online sales, and minimal long-term debt for Fortress balance sheet. For industry context, Sports Authority went bankrupt in 2016, Sports Chalet shuttered in 2014, Dick's absorbed the displace's share.
So now to understand the numbers that Cam just explained, we need to look at DIG's strategic position and governance, how they combine their strategy with their cultural organization and design to make sure that those two align for success. First of all, mission and strategy. Their mission was to be the first sports and fitness specialty retailer in the US and enable people to pursue their passion in sport. And for that, even at the corporate level, but also at the business level, they always use a differentiation strategy, including a store within a store or specialty zones. If you go to DIG's, you're going to have the golf section with some PGA Tour professionals that help you pick the best equipment for you, something that differentiates them from any other brick and mortar stores. Then you have the private label portfolio with Kalia, Second Skin, Walter Hagen, Primed, and Fitness Gear. These are brands that you cannot find anywhere else. They're only at DIG Sports. And then the Sports Matter and Team Sports HQ Youth ecosystem. Sports Matter is basically a charitable way for DIG's commitment that they make to invest in youth sports, and that gives them some identity, and it ties to their mission and their purpose. And then the Team Sports HQ is an ecosystem of apps that allows people to track youth sports, which also ties in with their mission of trying to promote sports for the younger generation. So these are the reasons why DIG's has been able to differentiate themselves from their competitors and still survive in a changing environment. And then they have selective price matching to maintain trust. They always match prices with Nike and Under Armour. So they are trying to do right by the customers. They're standing by their mission, which is very important. Now, this wouldn't be possible without having the governance system, the dual class stock structure. Everybody that buys a share in Dick's Sports, they get Class A stock, meaning 1 vote per share, but most of the company is owned by the Stack family, which have Class B, they're Class B shareholders, meaning that they have 10 votes per share. This means basically that the Stack family controls the company's direction. And in Dick's situation, that's good because they can always prioritize long-term growth over short-term profit. This is something similar that we've seen in the Chick-fil-A case as well. Now we're going to take a look at the external environment behind the decision. For that, we conducted a past analysis. We're going to start with the political factors. The post-Parkland gun control debate, which sparked a lot of backlash, and also talk about new legislation about gun control, and also the role of retailers in selling rifles. Then Trump tariffs on Asian imports in 2018, which can really happen today as well, obviously affect the company. And then the state and federal minimum wage pressure, which creates a price floor that also can affect the company's cost. When we look at the economic factors, we can talk about late cycle expansion, which means that the economy has been growing constantly for a long period of time, but now it's showing signs of stagnating or slowing down even, which affects obviously how much discretionary income people have for products sold by Dick's. Then retail apocalypse, that it's continuing. The latest example was Toys R Us in 2018 that went bankrupt. And then another big player that influenced the economic factors is Amazon, because they were so efficient in their retail operations that they cut costs so much that everyone that wants to compete with them needs to do the same. So this is a lot of pressure applied to a brick and mortar store who's trying to transition into a more technological environment. Then we can also look at the socio-cultural impact and where are some opportunities. We have the athleisure boom. Gen Z and millennials are much more inclined to be into fitness, to pick them as a hobby, so that can represent an opportunity for Dick's. And also they're more value driven. And then the technological, this is another important aspect that the company needs to take into consideration, because most of the business is moving online on the internet, with Amazon and Walmart already having e-commerce as their main priority. So Dick's should pivot to that as well, and a lot of their suppliers did that as well, with Nike and Under Armour pivoting to direct-to-consumer sales. Also, from a technological perspective, influencer marketing has become a very big thing in the past couple of years, and Dick's can take advantage of that even by introducing brands made by influence as their private labels in their stores. Now, let's take a look at some external factors that are more focused on the industry. For that, we conducted the Porter's 5 Forces analysis. First of all, we need to start with threat of new entrants. We assess this as medium because it's very tough to open thousands of brick and mortar stores. It requires a lot of capital, which not a lot of firms have to invest. But the internet created an opportunity for new entrants. So for example, Amazon and Walmart can compete in this area of sports leisure equipment just by having online sales. Then bargaining power of buyers is very high. The demand in this industry is pretty elastic. A small price change could result in a big change in demand. This is emphasized especially by their selective price and them trying to match prices with Nike and Under Armour, because the buyers can always change the suppliers. You don't like Dick's, you can go to Nike. You don't like Nike, you can go to Under Armour. So there's a lot of competitors, there's a lot of options to pick from, a lot of substitutes for this. Then we can talk about bargaining power of suppliers. This is also very high, with Nike and Under Armour having around 35% of the whole market share of suppliers. And they are both expanding to direct-to-consumer selling, so they won't necessarily need Dick's as a mediator to sell their products, which is a threat for Dick's as a company. And then we have threat of substitutes. This is how different platform services can replace our service, and this is becoming very important because Amazon, Walmart, Lululemon, and direct-to-consumer brands are different than us because they're not brick-and-mortar stores, but they offer the same service, sometimes even quicker. And then the industry rivalry is very high. We're not in a blue ocean. This is an established industry that doesn't grow as much anymore. It's a red ocean, it's a bloodbath out there, and we have really similar market share. Academy has 10%, Dix obviously has 17%, as it was mentioned before. Bass Pro has 9%, and REI has 5%. So looking at the whole picture of the industry, all these forces apply a lot of pressure on Dix as a company to find a strategy to differentiate themselves and make sure that they grow continuously.
All right, internal analysis, these are the strengths. Dick's Sporting Goods is the #1 sports retailer in America, holding 17% of the market. They have $1 billion in private labels. Some of these labels are Calia, Second Skin, Walter Hagen, Prime, Fitness Gear, higher margin owned. These are higher margin owned brands. They have expert staff at they have PGA pros in the golf section, certified personal trainers, in-store gait analysis, that Amazon cannot replicate. They are big into youth sports with the 25 million youth sports commitment, the Game Changer app like we previously discussed, and Pop Warner partnerships. They have 1.9 billion in Forge's balance sheet, stockholders equity, minimal long-term debt, financial flexibility for transformation.
So okay, now let's start talking about the internal analysis and the weaknesses of Dick's Sports. Starting with the margins, even though they were expanding the amounts of stores they physically had, the margins were shrinking. We can see from 2014 to 2017 there was a drop from 18.13% to 5.56%. What does it mean? That their gross sales were up, but the margins were extremely low. But there's a reason for that. Because of the digital and IT capabilities, they're having a huge gap from Amazon and other companies in the same industry who were able to sell directly to the consumers themselves, which relates to the other point that we have here, that they were heavily dependent on Nike and Under Armour, who were also starting to sell online directly to the customer. And Dick's Pro was struggling to bring customers into their physical store and losing customers in a faster pace than ever. And the last but not least, the hunting section that was one of the parts of Dick's Sports were starting to have a severe decline throughout the years that were following. Okay, now let's do the SWOT analysis, starting from the strengths. As we mentioned previously, them being the #1 market shareholder at 17% is a huge advantage already. Second, having the fortress balance sheet, them having very low debt, which is a big advantage for Dick's Sporting Goods. And the last, private labor portfolio being over $1 billion. Now let's go to weaknesses. As I mentioned in my previous slide, it's a huge weakness having the operation margin shrinking, the hunting category declining, and I think one of the most important ones in the modern area was the digital capabilities, that there was a huge gap starting to create between Amazon, direct to consumers from Nike and Under Armour, and Dick's Sports, who were mostly selling in the physical stores themselves. Let's go to the opportunities. There were huge opportunities coming up, such as the Gen Z alignment with the sports, and people were starting to get into leisure activities more and more in the modern era. Also, women's growth in the sport, in the athletic environment. And the last, Dick's Sporting Goods investing into the youth sporting ecosystem, which was creating future generation of athletes who will be dependent on the brand itself and be future customers throughout their lifetime. Okay, and coming down to the last thing and the threats. As previously mentioned, tying up with the weaknesses, Amazon and direct to the consumer gap growing. Also, Nike and Under Armour continuing to grow their section to direct to the consumers and taking the in-store customer from Dick's Sports away and selling them to their online platform. And also the last, tariffs. Trump being president in 2018 starting implementing tariffs, which was a huge problem for the industry itself because of the rising prices of the sporting goods.
Now we're going to take the SWOT analysis and turn it into a TOAST matrix. The TOAST matrix takes this analysis and turns it into a 4-quadrant analysis that clears 4 strategy paths. So starting with strengths and opportunities, where do those cross? How do we use what we're good at to capture more value? DIG's value stance, backed by the governance structure that protected it from shareholder pressure, directly positions the company to attract purpose-driven Gen Zers, the faster growing and the most values-driven segment of the market. This is our highest rated strategy, weight 5, priority 5, impact 5. Then we need to talk about the private label capability that can be expanded to women's athleisure. That's a high margin, high growth category where DIGS already has infrastructure through Kalia and Second Skin, which are private label brands. And then Sports Matter and Team Sports HQ build a family loyalty flywheel that online retailers simply cannot replace. Now let's look at WO, weakness crossing opportunities. How do we fix internal gaps by chasing external growth? DIG's biggest weakness right now is their digital space. It's behind Amazon e-commerce experience. The opportunity is that athleisure and fitness are growing fast but online. So the move is to accelerate digital and IT investment now, before that window closes. We also rate this at the weight 5, priority 5, and impact 5 on our strategy list. Hunting floor space is declining structurally. Reallocating it to women's apparel and private label fitness would produce a direct impact and address this weakness, and we will be able to capture more value. This would also include recruiting stronger data analysis to help build an e-commerce system and also market analysts to be sure that we address the new changes in the market. Now let's look at strengths combined with threats. How do we use our strengths to neutralize the threats that we're facing? We mentioned that DIGS has a strong balance sheet. We have minimal debt, 1.94 billion in equity, gives us the flexibility to acquire or partner with emerging brands like Gymshark, for example, or Fitness Apparel, or Primo, Grant Horvat's golf brand, to access younger lifestyle consumers before competitors do, so we can tap into new markets. Then we can have specialist employees create in-store experience that Amazon cannot replicate. That's a structural defense. We have capable employees that can provide a better customer service to differentiate ourselves. And then we can have different exclusive product partnerships to differentiate ourselves from Nike and Adidas, and then partner with some other private brands to create a unique in-store experience. Now let's tackle the most scary quadrant, weakness combined with threats. How do we protect ourselves when both things are going against us, externally and internally? We need to gradually phase out remaining hunting and firearms categories where they're unprofitable or no longer fit the brand. This limits both financial drag and reputational risk. Then we need to accelerate private label growth directly, and we need to reduce our dependence on Nike and Under Armour, who are the biggest supplier threat. More owned brands mean more margin control. We need to own our product. Diversifying sourcing geographically reduces tariff exposure to policies and then supply chain fragility, especially relevant given the 2018 trade environment, given the current day trade environment. In short, this analysis tells us to lead with the brand repositioning, fix the digital gap, and reduce supplier dependence all at once, which is not impossible but difficult. This table above quantifies DIG's overall strategic position. Let me quickly define the terms. Weight reflects how important we consider each factor to the company's long-term success. The 7 factors add up to 1, basically to 100%. So this is a forced prioritization. Rating is a 1 to 5 scale based on DIG's currently performing on that factor. 1 is weak, 5 is very strong. This is our assessment based on the full internal and external analysis. And then the score is simply multiplying the weight by the rating. The higher the score, the more that the factor contributes to DIG's overall success in the future. Now let's walk through the key entries. We look at market leadership and brand strength, and that gets the highest weight of 0.2 out of 1, and we rate it at 5. DIG is the number 1 in specialty sporting goods with 70% market share, so that earns a full 1 score. Digital and IT capability also gets the weight of 0.2 because in today's retail environment, it's equally critical, it's the most important thing. But DIC's rating is only 2. It's lacking behind meaningful competitors such as Amazon. So this gap drives just a score of 0.4. This is the biggest drag of the company at the moment. Appeal to value-driven consumers gets weight of 0.15 and rating of 5. Then we can look at the private label brand strength. We weigh that as 0.15 as well, ranking it 4. The portfolio is strong and generates over $1 billion for them in revenue, but there's still room to grow. The score is 0.6 overall. Then supplier concentration and direct-to-consumer threat gets a weight of 0.1 and a rating of 2. Nike and Under Armour together represent 35% of the merchandise that we sell, so that's a real vulnerability. Then we can look at operating margin compression and hunting firearms decline. Both of them weight around 0.1 and get a rating of 3. These are problems, but DICS is managing them. They're not strengths, they're not crises either. So our total is 3.55 out of 5. We're in a solid spot, but we're basically at a strategic inflection point where we can go up or we can collapse.
Okay, now let's look at the 3 strategic alternatives that DICS Sporting Goods can take in the upcoming 5 years. First one being the differentiation. So complete the firearm exit. Stop selling firearms and continue to expand in the youth sports ecosystem, having private labels and accelerate in digital platforms. So what profits do we get from this alternative? First being already biggest opportunities in the market, and we can see where the market is moving, and our company is going to be moving towards that direction. And second being, this program has been already in motion, starting with lowering the firearms and cutting them off, and implementing the youth programs into the system starting from 2018. There are of course some cons in the system also, as we're going to spend around $750 million to $1 billion of starting capital to change, and it's going to be very tough as execution from starting from the top of the company going down, and it's going to be a really time-consuming process, and which can cause of shortening the profit margins in the upcoming. Okay, now we have the second alternative, stability and operational optimization. So basically what this means, let's hold our position. Let's continue selling guns. Let's continue being in the store, only selling in the consumers in the store, not expand our business into direct to the consumer through our online platforms. So what are the pros? Of course, it's going to be very easy to execute, minimum risks, minimal disruptions in the process of the business that have been going on throughout many years. It's very convenient. But what are the cons? One of the biggest cons I want to compare to is Kodak, as we discussed in the class previously. A company that didn't make a change, was a leading company in the market itself, but they decided to stick what was working at the time, and we all know how badly it ended. And that's what can happen to DICS Sporting Goods if they choose the alternative number 2. And the third option being just exiting the hunting and the rifle industry, but keeping the execution of the parts of the company the same, basically. So continuing with the statement of not selling firearms in the company can be a huge change, which can make them walk away from a $1 billion revenue. But this is going to be easier to execute also. Cleaner brand story. They don't try to change much in the brand itself that has been established for many years. It is going to be as the fastest margin recovery because they've been continuing to do what they've been known as and being good as throughout many years. So it's the convenience process and less risk-taking, and as we talked previously, the execution in management that can start struggling if you do too many changes in the company itself. So in 2018, the decision was already made, and it was no longer the question of whether it's how the company is going to execute the decision that was made already. So let's start at the corporate level, the highest position where the company was directed. Starting from all the way at the top, they should reallocate resources, which is always tough to do, from taking away from one department which you're cutting off and reallocating to the other departments to know which one is going to succeed and which one is going to fail. So let's go to the next step of the business unit. Let's take a look what Dick's Sporting was good at. Brand purpose, expert service, private label, community, omnia-channels. That's something that Amazon and other companies, other competitors that cannot copy. So we have to allocate the resources that to create more of differentiation in the market to stand down among the competitors. And the functional, how are we going to execute all this? Of course, to create a strategic fit, you need the departments that work together and work seamlessly. So marketing leaders have to create the brand image. The IT has to close up the gap from Amazon and the other competitors in the digital space. Operations have to make sure that the flooring and how the companies, the store is designed, physical stores are designed, are customer friendly and bring the most revenue in the market. And HR bringing the future talent to assure that the company keeps growing and rising to the years to come.
Now that we've chosen our strategy, the bigger question, the most important question, and the hardest thing to do is how do we implement it? So we have 5 programs over 5 years. We start with firearms transition. We want to complete an assault rifle exit, raise age to 21 in all stores for buying assault guns, and then gradually reduce hunting footprint. So maybe take out some of the hunting sections out of the store gradually. This is going to take 2 years. It's going to cost around $50 to $75 million. And then it's going to be on the chief merchandising officer to coordinate the activity within the stores. Then we're going to look at the digital and e-commerce transformation, which is very important. We need to re-platform. We need to personalize and to create an omni-channel fulfillment. By omni-channel, we mean that we want to have an integrative marketing approach that everything feels like the same identity. Either you're in the store buying or online or through other platforms. Everything should seem like a unity. We're Dick's Sporting Goods and this is what we're selling you. This is gonna take 4 years and it's gonna cost $400 to $500 million. And it's going to be on the Chief Technology Officer, but also on the HR department. This is the most key aspect of implementing this overall strategy, and we need to be very careful about it and also set benchmarks and compare ourselves with Amazon, for example, to see if we're moving into the right direction. Then our third program would be private label expansion. We're trying to increase our private label revenue from 12% to 20% in 6 years. Online first launches, then in-store, and maybe even create these events that people can show up to and get exclusive merchandise. This should be a continuous process. It should cost around $150 to $200 million. And it's also on the chief merchandising officers. We identified some opportunities to work with some influencers like golf athletes on the YouTube space like Grant Horvath or Phil Mickelson with their brands that they're trying to develop and try to sell them in our stores. Then we look at youth sports ecosystem scaling, deepen our Team Sports HQ and Game Changers, Sports Matter apps to make them into America's #1 youth sports family platform. So we're trying to create an integrative platform for the young athletes and promote our products in there as well. This is also a continuous process. It should cost around $75 to $125 million, and it's going to be on the president of the company. And then we're going to have brand and communications repositioning. We are trying to translate into new identity of the brand, a post-Parkland era. We're not selling guns anymore. We're trying to become this friendly company that's trying to promote sports for everyone. And that's going to be a continuous process. It needs to come from different areas, from events, from how we market ourselves, from articles. And then the budget for that is $75 to $100 million, and it's going to be on the Chief Marketing Officer to lead the marketing team into that direction to make sure that our actions align with our purpose and our mission. So a total 5-year investment would be probably $750 million to $1 billion funded internally, which is a lot of money, but our advantage is in the governments, in this fact that shareholders don't apply that much pressure on us, and we believe this will have a positive long-term impact on our company. Now, let's look at how we are going to evaluate that we're taking the right steps and our strategy is working in reality. First, we're going to look at the financial side. We're going to look at the operating margin recovery, at comparable store sales within the stores, at gross margin and free cash flow. We want, from a financial standpoint, to recuperate or get a return on our investment in 5 to 7 years. So we need to make sure that we are on track. Then, from a digital perspective, we're going to look at mobile app monthly active users. That's a good reference to see if we're growing and if we're targeting the right market. Then we're going to look at the e-commerce conversion rate, how many people are buying from the online store. Then we're going to look at the Net Promoter Score. This is calculated by asking consumers how likely they are to recommend the app to another friend. And you have promoters that are 9 to 10, you have passive people that are 7 to 8, and then you have detractors that are 0 to 6. Basically, it's calculated by subtracting the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters. So you can get a score between minus 100 to 100. The closer to 100, the better. Obviously, we want people to promote our app in their circles. And then the page load speed, which is important as well. Then we're going to look at the brand purpose. The brand sentiment index, social, because we're appealing to a value-driven millennial Gen Z consumer target market, we want to make sure that they align with our brand value, that they buy the reason behind our product as well. Then share of voice on values and issues. We want to make sure that we are on the same page with the current trend in that sense. And then we're going to look at survey-based brand trust, basically sending out surveys to people, hey, how much do you trust in Dick's Sporting Goods, in their mission and in their values? And then the earned media value, how we are perceived by the overall mass media. Then we're going to look at the private label percentage of total revenue. We already discussed that we want to increase this to around 20%. What's our gross margin? This should be our highest profit margin unit. We want to look at the repeat purchase rate and then category share. And then youth sports, we want to have active leagues that we fund actively on Team Sports HQ and to deploy the Sports Matter app and make it more integrative and bigger. And then we want to look at family customer counts because we're trying to promote youth sports. We're also trying to attract the parents in store or online to buy merchandise for themselves and for their children. So we're trying to target the whole family as a group as sporting fans. In conclusion, the Parkland decision wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. It's the beginning of a new era in Dick's Sporting Goods. We're at a strategic inflection point and we decide to move up. We have strategic clarity. We have an internal fit. So our strategy aligns with our organizational design. This is going to help implement the strategy and it's going to help us gain a competitive edge. Will it be difficult? Yes, but it's not going to be impossible and we believe that the company is going to have future success.
Okay, now let's end with the quote from the CEO, Edward Stark himself. The further you get from the athlete, the more you should listen and less you should talk. And I can say the same about our class for this semester. We as Team 4, we're going to keep listening more and more in our future endeavors in the business industry itself. We're very thankful to you, Dr. Frantladis, for guiding us and making us listen. And we went a long way throughout this semester, all of us, and we are thank you for everything. We hope to see you in the future. Best of luck. Goodbye.
Nice.